Welcome. Welcome to the Center for Positivity, Wellbeing and Home. Today we have Dr. Marsha. Dr. Marsha Hardy. Okay.
Receiving.
Yes. How about switch off the recording and then switch on it? Switch off the recording and then switch on.
Hold on. I'm hitting stop and it's not wanting to. Here we go. Did it stop? I think so. Yes.
It didn't stop yet.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome. Wellbeing and Hope. And we have Dr. Hardy with us. She is Associate Professor of Business and Technology. She is wonderful person. She teaches lot of courses in business, and today she will be helping us understand what is emotional intelligence, and we are trying to learn about emotional intelligence for your success. And I welcome you, Dr. Hardy, and I am thankful for that you are sharing your wisdom and time with us. Floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your education and your experience before we will talk about the emotional intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Beaver. I appreciate that. I will tell you a little bit about myself, just to sort of put some ground information on who it is that's speaking about emotional intelligence. My name is Dr. Marsha Hardy, an associate professor at Northwestern State University. I'm proud to be a member of the School of Business and the College of Business and Technology. My background academically is that I worked on my doctorate or received my doctorate from UCLA, which is University of California, Los Angeles, and have had the opportunity to work in several different academic environments. University of Missouri, Kansas City, Wichita State University, Loyola University, and also UCLA. I'm delighted to be here at Northwestern and am able to share some of the information that I have learned over time. I've had a life inside of academics and also outside of academics. I am a business consultant and have been for most of my adult life, having been the owner and operator and entrepreneur of a company called McClure. That would be me, McClure Moynihan Inc., an electronic commerce company that serviced healthcare, banking, aerospace, and developed some products and applications for sending and receiving information electronically, as well as doing business consulting for a variety of small to large organizations on leadership management and training and how to orchestrate and process with teams. And I've done a lot of work in that area, which brought me to this specific area of emotional intelligence. So I'm really excited about discussing with you all today, or telling you all about emotional intelligence. It is an integral part of success, and I'm surprised that, in fact, we don't see it being mentioned more often in many of our courses. It is integral to success in just about any area that you might find yourself working, whether it be in a business environment or an academic environment, nonprofit, for-profit, in your community, and then personally, obviously, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. I'm so glad that you all are here. Wanted to just do quickly to let you know, going to give you some information about the definition of emotional intelligence, just a short bit on what are some of the defense mechanisms that happen with our emotional behavior. I'll identify for you all the 4 components of managing our emotions, how to manage the emotions, and the role of emotional intelligence in your success. I'm really going to focus in on that. And then finally, and importantly, this is about application, you all. So I want to make certain that you're understanding and you have a good sense of what are the strategies for success? What are some tips that you might incorporate that you haven't maybe already incorporated, or you'll be able to tick off some boxes in where you have already incorporated some of the emotional intelligence activities that you need to perform at a higher level. So I am so delighted that you all are here. So let me start off with emotional intelligence definition by first saying, you know, most of us grew up thinking that if someone had this high intellectual quotient, IQ, that those were going to be the successful people no matter what industry they might be in. And there's been a great deal of research on the importance of, obviously, the intellectual IQ quotient. But what they began to realize over time was, guess what? There's a very significant part of success that's wrapped around not your IQ, but your emotional intelligence. And that's the term that was coined to discuss and describe this ability to identify and manage not only your emotions, but the emotions of others. Sometimes it's referred to as EQ, the emotional quotient. And again, you'll hear me say throughout the time that we're meeting here today that this emotional quotient or this emotional intelligence is about being able to use and manage and understand how our emotions can be used in a positive way. So we're looking at this from a very positive point of view. How do we relieve stress, communicate more effectively, and overcome some of the challenges that are related to conflict, which show up in our personal worlds and in our professional ones? So there are three skills that you are going to want to control. You're going to want to have a part of your best practices in order to work with other people. It's going to be emotional awareness, your ability to harness your emotions, do problem solving and critical thinking, and your ability to manage emotions. And that's going to be whether you're a student or a professor or in the corporate environment. So success involves having emotional intelligence, called EI, which is being able to read people's feelings and your own. Claim that. That's part of being a leader and being successful at being a leader. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an area that has now become very prominent in being almost a required factor for people to be successful in their leadership roles. But you need to know that successful professionals, leaders, persons don't have to be born that way. There may be some innate abilities that someone might have, but clearly, and that's why we're having this session today, clearly this is an area where you can learn and you can incorporate those new tasks and or those new tips and those new ways in which to work so that you are superior in your emotional intelligence and able to work and function better with the people who are around you. And that's going to be whether it's in your work environment or your professional. And that is true as we go through here. Please be sure to think of it as not only your professional arena, but also your personal lives. So there are four components, all right? First one, self-awareness. Second, self-management. Third, social awareness. And fourth, relationship management. And I'm going to cover each one of these and then wrap them up for you towards the end. First, it's self-awareness. This is the one that many people have a very difficult time grasping, and that is knowing yourself, understanding who you are in this world as a member of a society of one, a society of one, and many. Because if you don't understand who you are, it's very difficult to understand what impact that you might have on others. So once we recognize who we are, it makes it much more reasonable for us to expect that we can successfully work and manage with other people, whatever environment we might find ourselves in. The second one is self-management. I particularly like this thought in that we have all sorts of information and emotions that are in our head, but how we impact the world and how we integrate that information from the world and with ourselves and how it affects our emotions is very critical to success. We must be able to harness and manage ourselves in order and how we perceive and act within the world in order for us to be successful. I love this picture because this is any one of us on a bad day that the outside world has come in and has impacted us in such a way that we are running around crazy, not accomplishing what we're expecting to do, frazzled, worried, harassed, and recognize that the world is not moving the way in which we wish for it to do. In order to make it work in a way that we're wanting it to work, so towards our goals, our mission, our goals and directives, you're going to snap off, click off, cut those ties that have you being emotionally bound to negativity related to the world. You do a reality check. I want to say that about self-management. You're doing a reality check, but you are able to effectively manage the world and what's in your head. So you want to know yourself. The third one, the third component is social awareness. That's about being aware of yourself as related to other people. And those people can be in an inner circle of sphere of influence, or they could be people outside of your sphere of influence that are observing you. And being socially aware of how you impact them and how they are impacting you is a very critical component of leadership success and of emotional intelligence at a high level. In a business world, we look at how we are looking at suppliers, employers, employees, customers, the people that work with us as colleagues, and recognize that they are an integral source of how we receive our positive input and our negative input. Be aware of that, and how you manage those relationships is critical for your success. So reflect. The four components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Look at it differently, and I'm going to show you those four components in a variety of different ways so that you can visually maybe get an impact that works for you. But recognize that we're talking about two different areas when we talk about these four components. One has to do with awareness, that is being self-aware and socially aware, recognizing your emotions and other people's emotions. And the other is very action-oriented. And we'll be discussing some of those tips and suggestions as to how to work on successfully harnessing your emotions and working with other people in an intelligent fashion. But you can see that effectively managing that environment of yourself and your positive outlook and your adaptability, and then looking at your relationship management. What is teamwork? How do you deal with conflict, influence? How can you be an inspirational leader and lead to success? Applying, application is also some of the area that we're going to work on. I'll try to spend more time on that aspect with giving you some suggestions and tips as how to work with it. But clearly, we're going to experience a variety of different environments and around us. And our inner circle and our outer circle, Bob Ashgar says beautifully as managers, and I say it's about people. You can't help but shape the emotional life of an organization and the people around you. You are a star, whether you know it or not, whether you recognize it, whether you're front and center, or whether you're on the perimeters of activity. There are people who are watching and are emulating and are recognizing your behavior. And so recognize that you are going to have an impact on those people that are around you, positive or negative. And you're going to be the person who decides how, in fact, you manage those emotions. Because you will have emotions. We do have emotions. Another picture so you're seeing it: emotional intelligence, self-aware, self-management, socially aware, relationship management. You all will have this down when we finish, by the time we finish this session. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on defense mechanisms, but I want you to be aware that in the world, whether you know a name or recognize a name as a professional, that there are common defense mechanisms that we all have. And that when we feel threatened in some way in our environment, we either act out or compartmentalize certain areas and not share, or we deny that it's happening, or we may completely disassociate with it. And we're going to respond differently to difficult emotions. The way I respond is not necessarily going to be the way that any one of you responds to the same exact situation. So know that repression could happen where you're pushing back unpleasant feelings, regressions, childlike responses, you deny something's happening, or you may project. And many times when we see behavior that we dislike in another individual, it could very well be mirroring or projecting off of what it is that a fault that we have of our own. So I'm not spending a lot of time there. Know that there are multiple defense mechanisms, and there are wonderful people who can assist you in working with those very specific issues. And obviously looking to mental health specialists to assist with that in a personal way and a professional way is important to consider. But I want you all to know, and I'm going to focus here right now on us being biologically hardwired to mimic others. And this to me was quite an eye-opener a few years back, to recognize that, in fact, regardless of whether or not we want people to mimic what we do, if you are there and actively being a part of a group, you are responsible for having people recognize your activities and your emotions, and they will mimic them. And the more people, the more front and center you have, the more mimicry will take place. And so we have to be very, very clear and very, very responsible about how we present ourselves, because the people, the outside world, our inner circle, our sphere of influence may be adopting those same inner states that we are exhibiting. Mimicry happens, so recognize it's a critical part of what happens in the workplace and also at home. If the day starts out bad, there's a really good chance that you're going to take that with you to the office, and you want to be very careful about that. I also want to say, though, on that same note, that laughter is a way in which we express a positive sense of who we are, and that, in fact, you get somebody laughing in a room and you have one or two people laughing, you will see that same sort of mimicry and hardwired bring everyone up to a more positive, happier state than at maybe a melodramatic, sad moment. And so recognize mimicking can happen on the positive and negative side, but you're responsible for it, whichever it might be, whether you know it or not. Okay, so you know the four components. All right, now I want us to look at and focus on 5 distinct characteristics. All right, so sit back and relax. I don't know about you all, but I'm drinking some water and just relaxing here. I want you all to just be relaxed and understand the first distinct characteristic is self-awareness. Highly intelligent people who are emotionally intelligent are able to recognize their emotions, and they're able to work with them. They evaluate feelings and they manage them. That's being self-aware. Being aware that you're taking a drink of water, for example, is a physical understanding. Being able to understand your emotional well-being and that self-awareness is the emotional quotient that we talk about, or EI, emotional intelligence. A well-tuned emotional adult, that is you, being successful, will be self-aware. So you're able to step back and understand what's happening in your environment. A second characteristic is that successful, well-tuned people are able to do self-regulation, self-soothing, ways in which to bring themselves into a calm, less anxious space. One of the ways in which that's done is by breathing. Another example is taking a walk. And a third one I want to present, which is a very important one, and there's been a lot of research to indicate, and just recently there was some major research to indicate that thinking positively affects your success in a variety of ways, and that is professionally and monetarily and obviously personally. So you want to be in a situation because you are going to be at a higher emotional intelligence state and level to minimize the negative emotions that might be plaguing you or be around you. The third characteristic, motivation. Now, there are a lot of people who have negativity. Anybody been around people with a lot of negativity? I've been around it and I've seen it and I can feel it. Some of us feel it and are in tune to that sense. But there's been a lot of research again, and just recently in this past year, there's been some great research on the fact that negativity often disallows people to get to their goals. So having a negative sense of self, purpose, or not feeling good about yourself can negatively impact whether or not you're able to achieve your goals. That's a very important, significant part to understand about why emotional intelligence is important. If you have a goal, whether it be personal or professional, negativity will negatively impact your ability to reach it. People with high EQs, high EIs, move towards a positive attitude. And if there's a bad situation, they're really good at reframing. So I want you to think about being really good at reframing negative thoughts. I'm going to take something that's maybe practical for all of us. Do you have a dog? And maybe the dog maybe threw up on the carpet. All right, so let's put it down to something basic. A baby threw up on the carpet, feeling really bad about having to deal with it, right? Reframe it. How blessed you are to have the dog. How wonderful it is to experience other family members, even when they're in a crisis moment. How fortunate to have other people, family members that are here with you and to assist you on your journey. So move forward, moving from a negative frame to a reframe that's positive. I love this picture. We're getting ready to look about a successful you as a well-tuned emotional adult. Listen, empathy. I want you to look at this picture and see it. I get emotional when I am looking at the picture because it shows this empathetic sense of what's happening with two young children at the non-babbling stage, maybe. And there you can see an empathetic hand on the shoulder of a friend that is in some way wounded or hurt. And I've been in both places. I think most of us have, where you've either been able to be in a situation where you've needed empathy or where you have provided empathy at an appropriate time. And empathy is that fourth characteristic that says you're able to recognize how other people feel. And if it's not your forte to do that, work on making that a part of your success factor in being a better human being in the world. Recognize that if having empathy allows you to be able to work better with the person that is next to you, who is feeling something perhaps that's a little different than you are, and that you're able to put yourself in their position and recognize what they're about. It's not sympathy, it's empathy. The last of the characteristics, and I'm going to expand on this, has to do with social skills. High EQ people, they are able to navigate the planet. And when I say planet, I mean they navigate their family, they navigate their community, they navigate their neighbors, they navigate the people that are at work, their religious institutions, their academic institutions, their nonprofit, for-profit organizations. They navigate. And the better navigational that you are, the better attuned to the people around you, small circle, large circle, the more successful you're going to be. That is part of being a well-tuned emotional adult, and it's a very integral part to being successful. Navigating. So we're going to talk about doing a little bit of navigating. I am certain that every one of us in this session recognizes that we have had situations where we've had conflict. And part of the highly skilled and gifted emotional intelligent person, the well-tuned individual, is being able to manage conflict. Now, I could wax eloquent for 2 weeks on conflict management and resolution. I was fortunate to go to a negotiations and conflict resolutions program, a week-long program that Harvard had, Harvard School of Business had a couple of years back, and it focused on managing conflict. But what you'll find is we're all managing it at some point. Either we're managing it poorly or we're managing it professionally. So what does that mean? And I'm going to go through it quickly to have you a sense of it. It's when two people or more have different points of view and they're finding it incompatible to work together. It could be because of strong differences. It could be that you have interrelated activities that you have to do together. It could be that you're competing for scarce resources, like the dollar. You know what? Could be competing for dollars. Or maybe it's even something as important as just rewards. And it could be that you're looking for recognition, for someone to understand what a good job you've done lately, financial or even a personal word of encouragement. When you're under a high level of stress, an individual who may be performing normally at a high emotional intelligence level might find themselves slipping through more of a conflict situation. If you find yourself in an uncertain situation, and certainly with COVID-19, we have found ourselves in extraordinarily unexpected, uncertain demands being made on all of us. And that sets us up for conflict and for having to manage conflict. If we're not in sync with our goals and our vision, and if we're not communicating properly or in a way that's comfortable for the people around us, we may find ourselves in a situation where there's serious conflict that you're working through, professionally or personally. Please remember, I mean this, personally and professionally. You can have task conflict, or you can have personal conflict, relationship conflict. And when it's a relationship conflict situation, it feels personal, and that's a threat. So think back on some of those defense mechanisms that are used in terms of behavioral demonstrations. When someone feels threatened, they may put out a defense mechanism, and those happen in relationship conflicts, and they can in fact affect you personally or professionally, and or both. So how do you diagnose it? If it's relationship centered, you're going to look at the two people, and if you start hearing name calling or resentment is showing up in the conversation, there's a source of conflict there. You may or may not be able to mediate the situation. Please know and be self-aware enough to recognize when you have the skills appropriate to deal with a situation, or when you need to bring in what I like to call an outside party, a third party neutral to assist in mediating the conflict. Leader managers, this is really tricky, but there may be times when in fact you're going to find yourselves having to reassign the two parties that have conflicts, separating them out and working through it in a different way. But it's important to be able to diagnose the source of conflict in order to be able to recognize how to resolve it. I'm flipping this a little bit with conflict resolution to show you ineffective ways, ways that don't work when you're trying to resolve conflict. A nonverbal communication of discomfort does not resolve conflict. Calling people out in front of others does not resolve conflict. If you minimize the seriousness of this situation or the issue of someone else and express displeasure about it or make some derogatory joke about it, you are not functioning in a higher level of emotional intelligence. These are ineffectual ways in which you deal with conflict resolution. Calling someone irrational or incompetent, I will promise you they will switch you off, they will shut you down, they go into defense mode, and you are in a situation where the conflict has in fact been heightened rather than mitigated. So, how do you handle conflict? I'm going to move right down to the one that we'll work with, but I want you to know that there are 5 ways that are generally spoken of in terms of handling conflict. One is to avoid it altogether. The other is to accommodate it, say, yeah, okay, come on in, we'll do it your way. It's fine today. You win this one, we're good. The other is to share and compromise. Okay, you get a little bit and I get a little. The fourth one is compete. Competition can be positive or negative, and it really does depend on the circumstance. A great competition, such as a spelling bee, for example, is a great way to, in fact, heighten and increase the level of motivation for people to perform at a high level. And it's also a great way for people to excel and to get the best out of project members, for example. But one of the best, if not the best, way of dealing with conflict is to think about the collaboration model. Again, there's a great deal of information and research about it. A lot can be said about it. But I want you all to take away from today's session to know that collaboration is about setting up an environment where it's a win-win, as best possible you can, that we're working together and we're integrating, recognizing each other's pros and cons of the situation. What do you have to win? What do they have to win or lose? And you recognize it and collaborate and work together to provide the solution. There are a variety of ways in which that can be accomplished, and many times facilitators can assist with that. But recognize that these ways of handling conflict are appropriate for specific situations or issues. And collaboration is one of my favorites. All right, so are you an emotionally intelligent, high-level function personality at your workplace? Do you work well as an emotionally intelligent individual? I'm going to ask you to ask yourself these questions. Please don't answer out loud, all right? But I want you to think about this. How do you know if you're a high emotional intelligence individual, okay? First off, are you curious about people? Do you say, I wonder what she really meant by that. I wonder what she's doing today. I wonder what he's up to. I wonder what that actually means. One of my favorite phrases is, inquiring minds want to know. Well, emotionally intelligent minds want to know, what's going on. I love the picture of the child looking in the ground, trying to see what's happening there. Well-tuned emotional adults are curious. They're comfortable with emotional vocabulary, so they can say things like, I don't feel so great today. How are you feeling about what's going on? What do you really think about this? Be comfortable with using that vocabulary. It makes it part of you. And people can tell whether you're authentic or not. So you want to make certain that you grasp the emotional vocabulary, but that you make it your own. And then I want to lastly say that you have an understanding of yourself. And I mentioned it before when I talked about self-awareness, but I like the term holistic understanding. You see the whole big picture you. And I will be honest, there are days when you're going to be at your highest level, and there are going to be days when you're less than your best. But recognize that's all part of being a human being on the planet, and tomorrow's a new day. And you're going to work out a way in which to resolve the issue so that you, in fact, because you understand yourself, are going to be able to perform at a higher level of emotional intelligence next time that issue shows up again. So good morning, America. What are we offended by today? I have backed away from a lot of television watching with news. I come away with feeling more anxious and less happy many times when I'm watching the news. And so I'm recognizing that there are people who are more thin-skinned and less thin-skinned. But I want you all to recognize here, and this is the piece that I like hearing, is that, you know what, if you are offended, it's okay, but you want to work on not being easily offended. So I'm going to go back to the news. There are troubling things that I read or hear about the news, and I'm recognizing that it's not impacting me personally. But if someone says something that's not a nice thing about me, I'm going to have to recognize that, I'm not going to please everyone. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And I need to be sure that, as they say, water off a duck's back, that I'm not easily offended. You may be offended, but you want to not be easily offended. You also want to be able to judge character and not be haunted by the past. And each one of those is critically important to the successful you as a well-tuned emotional adult. Also, people who are high emotional intelligence, they give without expecting something in return. There's a lot of research to back these things up, and they're able to handle toxic people. And then if they're not able to handle toxic people, then they stay away from toxic people, because that toxicity is going to what? Impact your world and perhaps bring in a lot of negativity. And so you recognize, because you're self-aware, what you're able to manage socially and what you are not. And then you recognize that if there are toxic people in your environment and you are unable to manage them, that you learn in a best practical situation, back away, stay away. So I want to say that emotional intelligence is absolutely essential to your success, your personal success, your professional success, in whatever arena you find yourself, whatever profession you find yourself. So your smarts, your IQ is going to get you far. Your education, it's going to get you far. We're working on those degrees. It's going to get you far. I promise you, you're learning foundational information that makes you a subject matter expert in that area. However, it's critical for you to have access to emotional intelligence at a high level in order to succeed. So being closely in tune with the emotions of other people and being able to interact with them and be creative and positive, that's it. That's what you're looking for in an emotionally tuned individual. And again, I like this picture because we're seeing everyone working towards a center, which is the heart. So how can you be successful at work? All right. I'm going to give you just a few tips on that. Okay. First, you're going to be working on controlling your feelings before they control you. So you want to think of the I call the Zen zone. There's some harmony happening here. And keep in mind that the way you react to the frustration is your choice. Frustrations are going to show up, but the way you react is your choice. So why are we focusing on negative emotions? I want you to understand that again, and I know that all of you have experienced this, that negative emotions swirl in around us all the day, either personally for ourselves or for the people that we work with and are in close contact with. And so some of these, and I'm going to address some of these with just some really quick tips on how to deal with them, okay? Just some ideas to kind of give you some thoughts on how to work through these emotions. So there's frustration, worry, anger, dislike, and unhappiness. The first one, let's talk about frustration. How many of you all were frustrated during COVID-19 when you were trying to figure out how you were going to be able to relate and interact and communicate with your colleagues? Many of us were. But we have to stop and evaluate the circumstances. Find something positive about this. Gee, let's see, I'm going to now learn how to use WebEx, how to use Zoom, Teams, and effectively begin to participate in a dimension that I was less comfortable. And now I'm going to become a pro. Something that was a negative can be turned into a positive, although it was a frustration to begin with. The successful you is going to do some breathing. And I know that there are many of you all that are aware of how to do deep breathing exercises. I just came across one that I love. That is a quick set yourself, connect, and helps to improve your creativity and helps de-stress. And it's the box. It's the 4 box. I think that's what it's called. But what it is, it's a breathing technique. You sit straight 5 minutes. You breathe in 4. You hold it 4. You exhale 4. You hold it 4. You breathe it 4. And you do that for 5 minutes. And there's been some recent research that indicates that this box assists us in helping to alleviate the stress, the anxiety, the worry, and also help to open up our channels so that we're more creative and in tune with the world. Also focus on how to improve the situation. If it's a bad situation and you're worried, there may be a very good reason to be worried. See and focus on how to improve it. Deep breathing, this has been clinically proven. Your deep breathing is a natural tranquilizer. Use it. You can personally use it and enhance your mood and lower blood pressure and help center your thoughts. This one, worrying. How many of you all worry? Yes, yes. To varying degrees, depending on what's going on in your life. Yes. One trick that can be used is to create a worry log, and you just write down each of those worries. And there are a variety of ways you can work with that. I tend to like to take it and then bunch it up and then pitch it, and then I'll make another list. And then I look at ways in which I can deal with the problems that I'm having or the issue that I'm trying to deal with, and come up with actions to deal with each one. So those are 2 ways that you might work with the worrying issue that shows up for yourself and also for other people that you come in contact with. There are lots of reasons to be angry today. There are a whole lot of reasons. I'll start with COVID-19 and what's happened in our world, and then look to what's happened to businesses, small, medium, and large, what's happened to us all personally, and how we've all been impacted in some which way. The successful you is going to be looking at how to control it. All right, so look for the signs. We all start to see it bubble differently. So what is your bubble up sign for anger? Look at it. Maybe just close your eyes and try some deep breathing, or maybe the box. All right, but in some way to control it, to recognize something's not right here. I need to get this under control. And one of the things that I do is I picture myself angry. It's just not pretty. When I'm angry, it is just not a pretty picture. So if you don't want someone to be seeing you looking like that, and you probably don't, get that anger under control. But please, please recognize that anger is an integral part of who we are and what we are as people, and the value of a high emotional intelligent person is to recognize it's there, and then to do whatever is necessary in order to mitigate it. You don't like somebody? I'll bet you each and every one of us in the situation, there's somebody we don't like. You know what? That's okay. Not everybody's gonna like me, and I'm not gonna like everybody. But it's important for us all to set the example. Again, we were talking about mimicry. Setting the example of how you deal with someone or a situation that you don't like is very, very important to your success, and also the success of your organization. Be respectful, but be assertive. And I want to underline and underscore that. Be respectful. You don't have to like everyone, and not everyone's going to like you. So just get over it and move on and be respectful. Okay, take in that picture. I mean, is this just the picture of delight and happiness and joy and peace and tranquility? And I've got probably 20 other adjectives I could use, but just recognize that this is what, for me as a picture, is what I focus on to say that this is where I want to be in those moments that perhaps show up that are ugly. So some tips for if you're unhappy or you're disappointed, and we all are unhappy or disappointed at many different times in our lives. Just look at your mindset and adjust your goal. You can always find a reason to smile and smile. And there's some hardwiring in there that says when you smile, it does bring in this opportunity of positivity. So bring it on. Go find it. I would revert back to looking at my picture. Again, I would love to just see my picture and look at that picture to help me get past that situation. And I want you to remember, and I remind myself constantly, I have the power to change my situation. You have the power to change the situation. So just do it. The successful you're going to be able to deal with your negative emotions at work. You're going to cope with them, and you come up with ways. You're going to understand what the cause is, and you're going to come up with ways to improve, to be better, how better to deal with the stress that's happening in your life. The successful you working with emotions in your workplace are looking at your personal, you've brought them in, key tips as to how you're going to deal with it. And then when that negative emotion shows up, you immediately start to strategize as to how to interrupt that cycle of the negative emotion, whatever it might be. Research indicates that the longer you allow a negative emotion to work on you, the worse the impact is going to be and the more negativity it brings forward. So please, as soon as you see it happening and it's feeling not good, redirect, refocus, bring that positive side to the circumstance. You can make the difference. So the steps to managing our emotions at work: learn to accept the value, the emotions at work, pay attention to your own body language, pay attention to your instincts, your perceptions, recognize them, be very self-aware, and regulate those emotions at work. If you're doing all of that, then you're in a good place. Now, if you're in a leader manager position, I'm going to give you some quick tips, quick success managing emotion tips that you can just build in without anyone even knowing that in the process of being a leader that it's happening, and its purpose is so that you set up a positive environment and a positive culture for people to work with you. List the workplace issues that cause emotional reactions among the people you work with. Students, it would be the same for you. List the issues that are causing you grief, whether it be with your classes, your classmates, the dorm situation, the food, the lack of funds, whatever it might be. Identify the work issue that is triggering your emotional reaction and those among your employees. Construct a communication strategy for delivering a message that may be difficult for someone to hear. If you're at an all-staff meeting and it's appropriate to address the issue, do so. But please, please, do it with confidence and do it with honesty and transparency. And I do believe that people will know whether you're authentic or not. So present it in an authentic way that does represent who you are and the importance of addressing that issue for yourself and the people around you. A fourth, schedule some one-on-ones with people that have sensitive matters. If it's in a professional environment, you might find yourself in a work office and you quietly go in a room with one individual and you have that chat. Students, the same thing. You might find yourself in a circumstance where you just go one-on-one and have that chat with the individual if you're having an issue. Be sure that you're looking at that sensitive matter and discussing it one-on-one before you look to just bring it outside of yourselves, if possible. It's best to try and work inside of yourself. If you need additional assistance, remember I began with that mediation. You're self-aware enough to know whether or not you are able to mediate this or if you need a third-party neutral. Schedule one-on-ones for emotionally charged situations. I might also say you may consider having a third-party neutral in the room if it's very critical and it's something that is a major impact for not only yourself but the organization. The tip I'm going to give you is when you're doing any new hire orientations or leadership training, that's a really important time to be able to stress that communications and being able to share your sense of feelings in a responsible, respectful way is important to do. And then, of course, if you're able to review the policies and make sure that during training and all staff meetings that they are appropriate and that they are addressing emotional issues in a way that's fair and transparent, you will be seen as a successful leader, and they will be also very successful members of your team. So I'm going to wrap it up. All right? Give me 5 minutes. Wrap up. Emotional intelligence. It has been linked to success in a variety of different areas, and I can't think of one right off the top of my head that is not linked to emotional intelligence. Highly successful people have a high degree of emotional intelligence. It can be learned. You can learn this behavior. You can learn about your self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. But here are a couple of ideas again. That successful you is growing in your emotional intelligence. We continue to grow and develop our emotional intelligence. I want you to be aware of that and to embrace it. That we're not on that perfect level and we stay at that perfect level. We are constantly learning and adjusting and modifying who we are and growing in our emotional intelligence. So being self-aware, know who you are. make peace with your past and move on to being a self-manager. Maintain good physical and I'd like to say mental health. Learn to be positive. And I like this idea of doing breathing, deep and maybe some yoga and meditation, excellent ways in which to assist you in self-meditate and self-soothe. Social awareness, develop a positive view of other people. You know, they're people. They've got things going on too. Positive view. Understand the basic emotional needs of all of us, your needs and other people's as well. Try to understand nonverbal communications, work on that with social groups. It's a lot more difficult in this environment of WebEx and online interactions, but clearly we still have some of those red flags of not being comfortable or being angry or look and watch those nonverbal communications and understand them. And then also, and lastly, I want to say, learn how to support and affirm other people. Develop those skills that you're going to require for conflict resolution for yourself and your family and those people in and around you in your social circle. So a successful you, a well-tuned emotional adult, a high emotionally intelligent you is going to have these emotional abilities in hand. You're going to be aware of yourself. You're going to be able to manage your distressing emotions. You will be able to empathize, and you'll have good relations. Then no matter how smart or how IQ or how much learning you've had from other places in your world, you will go far. Thank you all. If there are any questions that you would have, I will open that up to you. And Niru will also, at this point, it's a question and answer section. If you would like, I can continue to lead it on and record or stop recording at this moment.
We can record, so in this case students who has it, so they can share it and then student can understand. First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Such a delight, like it is amazing. If we can put this four components, self-awareness, understand about ourselves, we can go so far. So we have first question. I think you answered that question that came in really in the beginning.
Okay.
And how do you develop any of these characteristics? You were talking about 5 characteristics that was like basically self-awareness, self-regulations, motivation, empathy, and social skill. So give them little bit tips so how they can develop it.
Well, developing it comes with, I think, a lot of self-reflection. Is first knowing yourself, and that's kind of old cliche, but it's a very important point to make. Is that if you know yourself well, then you will find personally what works best for you. There's lots of noise there. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recorder at this moment.